As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Okay, now Chief Justice Roberts, he concurred, he agreed, but on the judgment only. He made this very clear. He agrees with the ultimate decision, but he doesn't agree with all the opinions. And you know, what he says is Mississippi's, because this is what we were dealing with this Dobbs case, was Mississippi's law. And he says Mississippi's law allows a woman three months to obtain an abortion at 3 months. Although he does say well beyond the point at which it is considered late to discover a pregnancy, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But he personally, he takes issue with the decision in Roe in terms of when an abortion should be allowed, okay? Roe was about viability, that an abortion should be allowed up until the point that a fetus is viable, meaning that they could exist outside of the womb, and then the state can take over, right? But Casey changed it a bit and said other things. But he's saying he would abandon the viability part of Roe, but he doesn't see any need in this case to consider the basic right of having an abortion. And he said, I'm not sure, for example, that a ban on terminating a pregnancy from the moment of conception must be treated the same under the Constitution as a ban after 15 weeks. So what he's saying is, if this case had said we're dealing with the issue of whether a woman should have an abortion from conception, he's not sure he'd make the same decision. Do you know what I mean?
And how would you even fucking know? Like, are you gonna have sex with your partner and then go, well, I should go to the abortion clinic because there could be, I mean,
oh,
like
you wait till what some of these men say about when we should know. When's the latest we should know? When we really reasonably should know. So anyway, he concurred though, fuck him. Like I said, he didn't agree with all the opinions, but he concurred with the judgment. So effectively he fucked us. And then there were other justices who concurred but didn't write opinions. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's like fucking bitch whore. What's her name?
Oh yeah, the chick.
Yeah, she didn't. Shame on her.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, totally.
So then there was the dissenting opinions. Now, these are the opinions of the judges who don't agree, but they're outvoted, right? So, but they still get to, and they did write some lovely stuff. So Justice Breyer, Justice Sotomayor, and Justice Kagan, the last two being women, dissented, and they dissented fucking hard. And the start of their dissent is worth just reading out in full. For half a century, Roe versus Wade and Casey have protected the liberty and equality of women. Roe held, and Casey reaffirmed, that the Constitution safeguards a woman's right to decide for herself whether to bear a child. Roe held, and Casey reaffirmed, that in the first stages of pregnancy, the government could not make that choice for women. The government could not control a woman's body or the course of a woman's life. It could not determine what the woman's future would be. And that's the way it should be. Now, they went on that, Casey made some changes to Roe, but still upheld it, that the court struck a balance, as a court must do, and it said that the state could prohibit abortions after a certain stage, so long as that ban contained exceptions that safeguarded a woman's life or health. And even before viability, the state could regulate the abortion procedure in multiple and meaningful ways. But until the viability line was crossed, the court held that a state could not impose, and this is what Casey said, couldn't impose a substantial obstacle on women's right to elect the procedure, as she, not the government, thought proper in light of all the circumstances and complexities of her own life. So basically they're saying, yeah, each state is going to have different regulations, but everyone should still have the right. Okay, and that is a fair and balanced opinion. And they say today the court discards that balance. It says that from the very moment of fertilization, a woman has no rights to speak of, and a state can now decide a state can force a woman to bring a pregnancy to term, no matter what the consequences. And as we've said already, it doesn't matter if they were raped, if there was incest, if they're underage. Some states are going to just disallow any terminations.
And how does that protect the child? You know, if you have a little girl who's the victim of incest, there's all different types of abuse on children. And this one is going to be inflicted by the states themselves. And it just like, how could you even, with a clear conscience, as a state, try to go after somebody and convict them for child abuse on a child, and then on the same coin, force a little girl who has been, again, incest or rape, to carry a child to term, not thinking about any of that trauma that it's in, the effect on her fucking body, you guys. Like, I mean, if you're a woman, you're going to know what I'm talking about. But, you know, when you were 9 or 10, could you imagine?
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, I mean, and
what about the effect on the fucking child that ends up knowing that they were the product of rape or incest? Or that they weren't wanted, or that they were dumped at the fucking fire station, or, you know, given up for adoption because they weren't wanted. Not because that they were wanted, but they couldn't look after them. The choices that are being forced on women are going to have effect on the women, as well as these children that everyone is so fucking, you know, wanting to protect, even before they are children. It's...
And so there's the meme that's been going around forever and a day where it talks about the conservative. I mean, I'm not picking on the GOP, but that's where the conservatives are. So about how they're like fishermen, they're like throw them back when they're young, but get them when they're older. So basically, like, fuck them, like after they're birthed, you know, hey, it's not our problem anymore. But I mean, and you know, the reason why I bring up the 9 and 10-year-old is because a lot of you are probably like, well, you can't have a child at 9 years old. Well,
oh, you can.
So
yes,
yeah,
you can.
so for me, I couldn't, because I didn't get my period till much later, because I did not develop and still am trying to develop. But the thing is that, you know, there was an article about a 10-year-old girl who was, I believe, the victim of incest, and the state was basically saying, okay, well, you know, you're just going to have to live with it. And I understand that that's an extreme case, and I understand that that's designed to catch people's attention. And yes, is that always the norm? No. But those people are out there. And whether you're taking it away from a 10-year-old child or a 30-year-old woman,
it's not your business.
No.
And we've both said this. If you don't want an abortion, if you don't agree with abortion, don't have one.
Yeah.
And if I want one and I need one for whatever reason, how does that fucking bother you?
Yeah.
It absolutely does not.
Be pro-life for yourself and pro-choice for everybody else.
You do you.
Yeah.
And when you find that you're knocked up accidentally at 45 and you already have 4 kids, you better fucking have that kid. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, that's what you should do.
Because no turning back.
No turning back, bitches. And the dissent goes on to say how certain states are already saying that they're going to try and block women. We talked about this earlier, block women from traveling out of state. And even worse, some states are going to make it a crime for women to have terminations, a crime for people to help them, a crime for the physicians to carry them out. And they're going to start, we're going to start having this fucking Gestapo type people looking through their windows, find it, you know, reporting on each other. It's just awful.
And on our Roe versus Wade episode, we talked about how some companies were rallying around their employees, and we talked very specifically about Uber and Lyft telling their drivers that they will cover court costs if they get caught up where they have to drive a woman across state lines so that she can, you know, take care of her reproductive health, that they could be open to legal action. And Uber and Lyft stepped up before Roe was overturned, saying that they would cover those drivers' fees. Because this is real, you guys. Like, this isn't bullshit. Like, this is real shit coming down the pipe.
And touched upon earlier, and we've touched upon before, how this kind of decision is going to adversely affect women of low means, women of colour. And the dissent opinion says some women, especially women of means, will find ways around the state's assertion of power. Others, those without money or childcare or the ability to take time off work, will not be so fortunate. Mm-hmm. Maybe they will try an unsafe method of abortion and come to physical harm or even die, and that's going to happen. maybe they will undergo pregnancy and have a child, but at significant personal or familial cost. At the least, they will incur the cost of losing control of their lives.
In most cases, we touched about this on the life insurance episode, they do not have the means or I don't want to say the wherewithal. They don't have the means to get life insurance. So we talked about how a lot of women who have abortions either have kids already or they go on to have kids later. So if you have a woman who already has kids and then this has a whoopsie or something happens and she needs an abortion and she does it and gets it illegally, there is probably a very good chance that she does not have life insurance, which means that if she dies, not only did she die from trying to terminate a pregnancy, now she has potentially left children as orphans with no life insurance. And if you go back to the economics of discrimination episode, and we talk about redlining, for the average American who's not in the 1%, the bulk of their money is in their house and in their 401ks and their qualified plans. So if you have specifically made it so people of color for years could not get mortgages to build up assets, equity in homes, you are taking that and you're compounding it over and over and over. And then what happens is that it ripples through like a fucking pond, like a pebble in a pond, but then it becomes a fucking boulder. I mean, this is, I just, from a financial perspective, as Zoe's talking, I'm just following this to its conclusion. I've just seen, because I've seen this, not specifically, with pregnancy, but I've seen how finances run through good and bad in a family.
And the dissenting opinion made very clear. If we're going to keep talking about the 14th Amendment and the Constitution and how it doesn't mention abortion, they state, people did not ratify the 14th Amendment. Men did. We've said this earlier. White men, in fact. White men ratified the Constitution. And at that time, they didn't understand women as full members of the community. They didn't view women as full and equal citizens. And in fact, they had no legal existence separate from her husband at that time. Mm-hmm. And like we said, we didn't even get the vote till 1920. And then they go on to say, how is it that the Constitution, through this 14th Amendment that all people ratified, white men ratified, how is it that right now it does guarantee access to contraception, even though that wasn't mentioned in the Constitution, but it doesn't ratify a woman's right in the event that contraception fails to end a pregnancy in its earlier stages. And the ratifiers of the Constitution did, as we mentioned earlier, didn't address or protect interracial marriage, contraception, gay marriage, all the rights that we now enjoy. They didn't mention those either because they weren't recognized. We can't say they weren't a thing. They were a thing, but they weren't recognized as a right. Women were second-class citizens. Homosexuality was not talked about. Contraception wasn't a thing. So
and let's talk about on the contraceptive tip for just 1 second. So
just a tip.
Yeah, just a tip. So I'm gonna get personal. I'm gonna slow it down. I'm gonna get personal. Come on.
So am I.
Come on, girl.
Now is the time.
Come on, girl. So the thing is that I just want to talk about. I want to talk about contraceptive for 1 second. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who have been with your partners for a long time, you probably don't have to worry about contraceptive because you guys got whatever, or maybe somebody's fixed whatever. But I remember in my 20s, rubbers would break all the time. Like they would break at the base, or they would kind of lean. Like they wouldn't. I don't know how to explain it. Like I did the whole Planned Parenthood, and I can tell you exactly how to put on a condom. You take the condom out, you put the tip, you squeeze the very tip of the condom to get the air out of it. Then you put it on the tip of the penis, and then you roll it down until it's secure at the base. That's literally, I went to Planned Parenthood to figure out how to put a condom on correctly. These motherfuckers still broke. And I will tell you about a story like with Zoe's, what Zoe talked about with, the fact that if the woman does use contraceptive and it doesn't work that way, what happens? So let me explain to you, this is a very personal story. So they have female condoms, okay? Not diaphragms, female condoms, which are literally sandwich bags. So I don't even know if these things are still out, but these were out when I was in my 20s and I've never been married. So That's just, fuck it. I'm not going to apologize with my sexuality, okay? But the female condoms are like sandwich bags, and you put them in, and then the guy puts his penis in the sandwich bag, and then you have sex, and then he ejaculates in the sandwich bag, and then you gather it up and you pull it out. And then there you go.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah. So if the guy doesn't want to wear a condom because it doesn't feel good, then I'm like, okay. So I had a dude that we were kind of, friends with benefits, and we would kind of kick it, whatever. And I'm like, okay. He wasn't really a huge fan of condoms because he didn't like the way he's felt. I'm like, I'm not going to get knocked up, so we're going to do this. So, I'm like, let me try this female condom. So put the female condom in and everything like that. And we're like, okay, so it's a sandwich bag, ladies. Like, think of your opening. It's literally a sandwich bag sticking out of your opening. So, we're doing it, okay? And he's like, yeah, it's like, it feels, it feels all right, whatever. Well, everybody knows what sex is like. And then it started feeling better, and then he ejaculated. Well, guess what? We found out. He wasn't in the fucking condom. He wasn't in the condom. Because what had happened is from the normal course of intercourse, you come out. And then he comes out, then he comes back in, and he comes out. Well, at one of the points, he came out, and he didn't hit the opening of the sandwich bag. He went under it or to the side or fucking up, down, wherever. We're having sex. I don't fucking know. And so he ejaculated in me. Now, in that situation, if I had gotten pregnant, do you think it would have been fair for me not to have an abortion? Do you think it would be fair in that situation for anybody, man or woman, to look at me and go, you, meaning me, did not properly try to prevent the pregnancy when we did use contraceptions, and of course I did not get pregnant, thank God. But the thing is that in the same turn, do you think they would have looked at the guy and said, well, she had technically a female condom, you should have also had a condom on? No, of course not. They wouldn't have even fucking looked at the guy. But these scenarios happen all the time. Pills fail, rubbers fail, like this for again. So if you've been with your significant other for a long time with your partner, I think you might have forgotten this, or if you were just never a person who, maybe you married your high school sweetheart and you guys are still together, first of all, high five on that. But in that situation, which happens all the time in a variety of different ways, where women are on the pill, which is still only 90-something% effective, by the way, and you can't take it after 35, and you can't take it if you're a smoker, really. So the thing is that, do you think that you would be able to look at a 20-something-year-old me who was living with a roommate who tried to do what she was supposed to do and be like, oh no, you did not adequately try not to get pregnant, so now, bitch, you are carrying that to term? And so if there is any pro-lifers out there, first of all, if you've made it this far, good on you. But listen to what the fuck I just said to you. And think about what the fuck I just said. And then take that and extrapolate it out to incest, rape, any of that other kind of stuff. So don't act like we're out there banging dudes so we can run and get a goddamn abortion like it's a fucking half-yearly sale at Nordstrom's. It's fucking ridiculous. And that is a true story that happened to me. And that's just one of the times contraceptives have failed. Just one of the times in my sexual activity. So I wanted to share that story because as Zoe's talking, I'm thinking like, fuck, that fucking adequate contraceptive bullshit is just ridiculous. I'm sorry, Zoe. So I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share a story too at the end. But they also, the dissenting justices also said, Kavanaugh said, the Constitution, I'm going to say contraception then, Constitution is neutral, so we must be neutral. But like we just mentioned earlier, there is nothing neutral in this decision. You are withdrawing the right from millions of people in this country. And they quite rightly say, and I quite like it, they said, if he's so cool about letting certain states, every state make up their own decisions on this issue, would he allow certain states to ban guns? Of course not, because that's far more important than, us being up the duff. And there are some very important statistics in here that the dissenters bring up. An American woman, listen to this, an American woman is 14 times more likely to die from carrying a pregnancy to term than by having an abortion. But that's a risk that these white men and that
they're willing to take for us. That's nice.
Of course they are. Of course they are,
Yeah.
because that's not them. 14 times more likely to die from carrying a child to term than having a termination. They also stated that about a quarter, listen to that, 25% of American women will have had an abortion before the age of 45. 25%. Yet now you're saying, oh, no, if you live in the wrong state, you can't.
Or if you're the wrong economic class.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that we left England for because of the class system. 4th of July is 2 days from now.
Fuck that shit.
I guess I've been so looking at racism in the country and all of its roots and classism. I guess I thought we really didn't have to deal with, but classism keeps coming up buried in all of these little layers so much. It just happens that classism falls along racial barriers a lot too, all at the same time.
And it's all carefully and cleverly hidden. This isn't going to affect you women, because if you're really that bothered, go out and lobby, go out and run for office. What the fuck? What about this, 20-something-year-old mum who's already got 3 kids and is well below the poverty line? Is she going to be able to lobby for what she wants? Is she going to, be able to run for office? Is she going to be able to even vote? This is the problem,
And I had shared this on a previous episode, and I'm going to remind listeners too. When I was in my early 20s, I wanted to get fixed. I'm like, I don't want kids. I never want kids. I'm not going to want kids. And I went to the doctor and was like, just, can you fix me? Like, I'm not saying give me a hysterectomy. Just cut me or make it, I don't know, do whatever you got to do. Just fix me. And he said, no. He said, because you have to either be 26 years old or you have to already have 2 kids. So because I was in my early 20s, I could not get fixed.
And you knew what you wanted. And by the way, nothing has changed in the the preceding.
Still don't want kids.
20.
Still haven't wanted kids.
8 years.
And his reasoning was along that lines is that, well, women change. Not women, people change. And so you might think that you don't want kids. But I have a friend of mine whose daughter just had a full fucking hysterectomy at 21 or 22. So if one thing has been positive with the whole, a lot of people sit there and go woke generation and they talk really shitty about it. But if one positive thing that has come out of that is the fact that if a woman says, I don't want to fucking do this, then she can do that.
Can
and
she though?
She did.
Is it still that?
I'm
sure it's not easy.
Yeah, she was able to. Her daughter was able to, but I was told no. I was told that we cannot fix you.
Was she able to because she had some kind of underlying medical issue, or just because of her wishes at that time?
Yeah, it was not a medical issue. It was just the fact that she did not want to have lady parts. And so they
well, that's different to not wanting to.
No, she didn't want kids. She didn't. Yeah, she doesn't. They hysterectomied her at early 20s.
Well, is that what we're going to have to, women are going to have to start making fucking fundamental decisions like that at 20, 21?
Well, I don't think that they could still do it. That's what I'm saying. No. I mean, if when Roe was not overturned, I still could not get fixed to prevent myself from getting pregnant.
Well, why would you be able to now? You won't be able to.
Well, I'm wondering that. But I mean, she was able to.
Why would you? Okay, she was now, but she won't be able to. I mean, she was then, but she won't be able to now because they're not going to allow people to be sterilized at will. Well,
that would be interesting because I don't think anybody's talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're already talking about going back and reviewing the right to contraception. So that a hysterectomy is a full-on example of contraception. But anyway, so I'm wrapping it up. The last sentence of the dissenting opinion is very, very unusual for, a legal decision because I'll read it to you. With sorrow for this court, but more for the many millions of American women who have today lost a fundamental constitutional protection, we dissent. I mean, that should be on a fucking placard. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is a legal decision. 3 Supreme Court justices and they start it with sorrow. That's not how court opinions are written. Do you know what I mean? You don't usually put your emotions into it. I can only imagine how those two women and that man, who is now retired, by the way, but he is getting replaced by Ketanji Brown. Is Ketanji Brown, is that her name?
I don't know how to pronounce her name. Yeah, but Brown. Which, of course, a little too late, unfortunately.
Too little, too late. And, you know, we have all these... And I was reading another article about this earlier today, that Trump managed to get all these right-wing, young right-wing...
Yeah.
So they're going to be there they could be there for 40 years.
Right. And that's the problem when we covered in one of our episodes, the economics of the Supreme Court. We had an episode way before we even knew Roe was coming down the pipe. I mean, there's a lot of good information in this show, you guys. And one of the things that we talked about was the reason why Supreme Court justices are appointed for life is so that supposedly they are not swayed by the bias of running for an election. And that is the reason why they are appointed for life. But then it's like it's an act of God to try to remove one of these fuckers. And, you know, we already have enough dinosaurs in Congress. And they are young. Yeah, and they're liars. Let's not forget, let's go back to what 3 of them said. And you know, let's take that to its fundamental thing. If Zoe's trying to hire me and she's like, hey, I need somebody who can type 80 words a minute. I'm like, oh yeah, totally. I can totally type 80 words a minute. And then I come on the job and then I can't fucking type at all without looking at my fingers. Does Zoe not have every fucking right to fire me? She has every fucking right to fire me. They were
asked a specific question.
Right. And they answered. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that if Zoe's trying to hire me and I say, yeah, I can type, then I bold-faced lied to her. They lied. They lied to get a job that we can't fucking get them out of forever. Mm-hmm. And they're affecting us.
And mostly they're men. Of course they are. I mean, ugh.
Well, and I wonder if there was something where it was like, hey, every man under age whatever has to have a vasectomy, but don't worry, it can be reversed when you get married. There is no fucking way that would even make it to even the first. It's ludicrous. Like it's so ludicrous. It's laughable.
What are you talking? And I'm just going to end personally by saying that, you know, I have had termination and I wouldn't change it for anything. And don't forget, I'm married. I have 2 children that I birthed. I have 2 stepchildren, and I love children. I work now with children. But at that point in my life, when I was 18 and in my first year of college, and something went amiss, and I found out that I was pregnant. First of all, I forgot to mention in some of my notes that it's consistently by the people who made the justices who made the decisions saying by 6 weeks a woman should know she's she should totally know she's pregnant. That's not what happens. I was closer to 12 by the time I even knew that I was pregnant. That's because, hey, you guys, we talked about this in the other episode. Yeah, miss periods, you can be late. Even if you're late, I mean, stress can affect your periods. So much can affect your periods, and people can have, not consistent periods, whatever. But for me personally, it was a fucking huge decision, very emotional. I didn't tell my parents about it. I was, my first year at college. I just moved away, and this happens. And there was bearing in mind for me personally, my mother had left when I was 9 months old. I was like, I cannot do this. I don't want to be that parent. I am not ready physically, mentally, financially. I just started college to be a lawyer. What was I going to do? I mean, how could I do it? This was not going to work. And it's not an easy decision. I struggled. I cried. I talked to people. But ultimately, for me, there wasn't another option. And I would never change that. But don't for a second think that we're all running around going, I'm pregnant. Fuck it, take it out. It's a very personal, very difficult decision for everyone. And how dare you take that right away from me? Mm-hmm. Because if I'd have been forced at 18 to have a baby that I wasn't in any way ready for. I can tell you now, I wouldn't be an attorney now who fights for children's rights. You'd have me living in England still, who knows what, you know? And how dare you decide for me? The whole point of this show is to say that, honestly, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But don't tell me how I need to be and how I need to treat my body. And don't for a second think that anyone takes that decision lightly.
And so Zoe and I have had a lot of conversations if we were going to air this, because of all of the misconceptions. And so I have also terminated a pregnancy. It was after I was told that I could not get fixed because I was not 26 and had no kids, because that was like immediately, because I just always knew I didn't want to have kids. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to have a career. There is so much stuff that, you know, I wanted to do. And I knew that having a child by whoopsie or by drunkenness or whatever. And the thing is that that fucking sucks so bad is that if a woman gets pregnant for a drunken night out, well, the guy's drunk too. I mean, fucking A, you know what I'm saying? It's not like the girl's just like, fucking put it in me, you know, like it's just ludicrous how one-sided it is. So I was told that I could not get fixed because I did not have 2 kids already, and I was not 26 years old, and I was on the pill. And I can't remember, because the thing is that it used to be that you just took the pill every day. But then it was like, no, you don't take the pill every day. You take the pill every day and at the same time every day. Okay? So if you take vitamins, if you can remember to take vitamins every fucking day at the same time every day, you are a better person than me. Okay? So I was on the pill. I had I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I had come off of a horrendous breakup, where I was just too young, and I was inexperienced, and it ended up biting me in a big way. And this guy was a major rebound guy, and he was a total fucking loser. And I ended up getting pregnant. And he worked as a cook, not a chef, y'all, a fucking cook. He was a year older than me, I think, and this is in my early 20s, and he worked as a cook. It's basically like an equivalent of a Denny's, right? And soon as my period was late, I was like, what the fuck? I went into the doctor, and they tested, obviously I took it at home pregnancy, and it said I was pregnant, and I'm like, motherfucker. So then I go into the doctor, and I'm like, I'm pregnant, take it out. Like, right the fuck, like today. Like, take it out as I stand here. And they're like, okay, well, you're too early. And they said, first of all, let's test you. And I was pregnant. And I said, take it the fuck out. Like, I've never wanted kids. I've done everything I can fucking do. You know, I mean, like, I take this, like, fuck, I'm done. Take it now. No, you have to wait. You have to wait because there's a chance you could miscarry. That's what I was told. And I sat there and I waited, however, I can't remember how many weeks it was then, and I started my period. So then I called the doctor and I said, I started my period. And they said, okay, you could still be pregnant. And when I started my period, I was like, thank you, Jesus. Like, thank you, merciful God, for miscarrying this child, right? And they said, well, there's a chance you could still be pregnant. After I had, sorry, I just smacked my microphone. This is a very emotional conversation for me too. After I had rejoiced to the heavens that I started my period, took a pregnancy test, I was still fucking pregnant. So finally, I'm at the whatever requirement it was, where I was far enough along to be able to terminate the pregnancy, but at the same time, I wasn't too far, like whatever sweet caramel center that you need to get in to be able to terminate the pregnancy. And I called up, and I think it was Planned Parenthood, I think is where I went, because I didn't have health insurance. And they were like, hey, they were so cool. And I had went to Planned Parenthood for all kinds of different procedures. They had originally, that's how I got my pills. is because I couldn't afford them. I couldn't afford the pill. And so I got it through Planned Parenthood because it was significantly cheaper. And I got all of my exams there and all of my, all of your annual shit that you got to get as a girl, your breast exams, all that stuff. I got that all at Planned Parenthood. Anything that had to do with my middle part of my body, Planned Parenthood did.
Because let's not forget, all these Planned Parenthoods that are going to be closed down and, not be allowed to continue, they're not just about fucking abortions. Nope. They're about contraception, mammograms, monthly checks.
Every one of them there because I was broke and young and I was going to college. Or had I gotten my associates by then? I cannot remember. Maybe I had gotten my associates by then, but I was trying to save up enough money to pay for my last 2 years of college. I think that's where I was in that weird part. And they said, yes, but don't come on Tuesday because that's when we have protesters. And so anyway, I went in as soon as I could. And I do not like children. I've never minced about that. I don't like kids. I've never liked kids. I'm an only child. I don't like kids. And, I know some of you will have a visceral reaction to that where like when people say I don't like dogs, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So I'm sure a lot of you out there is like, what the fuck's wrong with you, Mel? Valid point. I understand how you wouldn't get it, but it's, you don't like dogs. I don't understand it, but it is what it is. And I remember laying on the bed and I teared up. And I looked at the lady and I said, do you think I'm a horrible person?
You okay?
And she looked at me and she said, sweetheart. And she wasn't an old lady. It wasn't like a sweetheart, like your grandma saying it. No, the lady was like, I was in my early 20s. She was probably 33 or 34. She said, sweetheart. She said, you're absolutely not a bad person. She said, I worked here the entire time I was pregnant and helped girls. She called me a girl. I mean, basically I was, early 20s, technically an adult. Girls just like you do what you're about to do. And I terminated the pregnancy and I didn't tell anyone. And I came home and my loser ass boyfriend was living with me and we were splitting everything. But basically I was carrying the lion's share as I'm trying to nurse a broken heart and all of this stuff happened. And I remember sitting there and crying, not because I wish I hadn't done it. Let's be very clear on that. Today, I will be 48 tomorrow. If I found myself in that exact same situation, I was in my earlier 20s, I would have had the abortion again with no, I've never looked at it and was like, I shouldn't have done that. Never once. Never, listen to me, never once. But that does not mean that it does not take a toll on you when you understand all of the different things that could branch off from. And if you think that you don't know anybody who's had an abortion, you are so fucking wrong. Mm-hmm. Because the one thing that I have learned as I have gotten older is that so many of my friends and associates have had abortions. And when these rules are getting made specifically by religious people, again, we go back to atheist believer. It disheartens me so bad that religious people are pushing this agenda and judging everybody when God literally tells you not to judge, but they conveniently forget that part. So the thing is that it's not what you think it is. And it's definitely not contraception.
Oh, and it's definitely not easy. And I forgot to say my part as well is that I had mine in England. So we had socialized medicine. First of all, I went to the wrong place for counseling. I thought it was, oh God, it's funny now, but it wasn't at the time. I thought it was, a place to talk about your options, and it ended up being a pro-adoption place. And she was, I'm there with my friend from university. We're both 18, and she's like, it was abortion wasn't an option. She was just like, it was all about pushing adoption. I'm like, oh no, I can't. I know that if I'd have had that baby, I would have had to have kept it because I wanted kids. I just didn't want to be my mother, and I just didn't want to do it then. And that wasn't the person to do it with either. But anyway, so eventually I found the right resource, and I went, and where I had it was just a NHS hospital, and they put you, I don't know about now, this is what, 28 years
very
ago.
close in the same time.
Yeah.
Zoe and I would have had.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was slightly older than you. Yeah.
It's a hospital ward, and you are put in a ward with pregnant women. So you've got women of all different stages of pregnancy, and there you are waiting for a termination. So for a start, that's fucking awful. But the whole process, it was just awful. There were babies crying, pregnant women, everything else. And you're there in this room full of many, many women, knowing that you're going down for a termination. And I tell you what, I even, as long ago as this was, 30-something years ago, I still remember when I woke up from it being done, I was sobbing. And I was saying to the nurse, I haven't even told my mum. And I've never told my mum, actually, but at that point in time when I woke up, I was just, I was beside myself. And I was beside myself for a long time afterwards. So all this about, women use it as contraception, they just run off and do it. Fucking bullshit. It is a very traumatic event. It takes a lot of soul searching and a lot of thinking, and you never really get over it. I'm with Mel. I made the right decision at the time, but you never really get over it. So,
Yeah, it's just.
But that's our right. It's our right to decide, and it's our burden to deal with it.
Yeah, and I didn't think I would. Obviously Zoe and I are mostly past the birthing, getting pregnant.
I totally am.
Age.
I'm menopausal, bitch.
Yeah, well, I'm in and out, so I'm, I guess, pre. But the thing is that I knew that it was going to be overturned because of the way it was going, but I did not realize how violated I would have felt, because all I think about now is all of the young 20-year-olds that were the age when where I had to face what I had to face now, potentially being in a state where they cannot terminate a pregnancy, and how different my life would have turned out. And, there's, to be fair, it could be good or bad. I mean, you can't just say, the kid, I would have ended up in the gutter, or, maybe everything would have turned out okay. But I made the right decision at the time with the information I had, and I would do it today, and I would have done it back then. And I think that is where you hang your hat on the decision that was best for you.
Right. And the way this decision that has been made is just it's
callous.
So painful. It makes me so angry. It makes me so upset. I told Mel, I've been living in this country for 20 years, and I have only now decided that I'm going to become a citizen for the sole reason that I cannot just be angry about this kind of shit. I have to be able to vote. And so I have no interest. Honestly, I don't. I've lived here. I've raised kids here. I've had a business here. I've lived almost, half my life here. But I had no interest in becoming a citizen. I was fine just being a permanent resident and whatever else. I can't do it anymore. If I'm going to carry on living here, which I am because my kids are here and everything else, I have to be able to have my voice heard. And I will not sit back and have this fucking bullshit.
So listeners, if you made it to the end of this, thank you for sticking around. This video episode is of course going to be broken up into 2 parts, as all of our episodes going forward, because if we did not change to this format, conversations like this would not have happened. We would have been to a time constraint, and we wouldn't have been able to really explore the topic. I am working on an episode right now that's very in depth about the price of oil and who really controls it, and peeling back all of the layers, and it's much deeper than I thought. And that level of research that we dedicate to an issue deserves episodes that really cover them. And so this will be the ending of the second part of the 2-part series. We appreciate you guys for tuning in, And if you guys could please rate and review us on the podcast app, and any podcast app that you use. We have had some technical difficulties, which I am sorting through, and we should be having those resolved by the time that this airs. Please. And so please give us your feedback. We really need it, and we would really appreciate it. And with that, on the end of this emotional episode, we are out this bitch.
And happy birthday to Mel tomorrow. And cheers.
Thanks for listening. If you like us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.